Hey there folks. So in this short video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can start setting up all the things that we need in order to play as this character. Because everything we've done so far has been fine for kind of previewing. You can see I've got the kind of side scroller character, I've got the top down character. I've just been playing around with the things like the different camera angles and the setups and sizes of those. But how do I actually get these to be playable? Like if I press play, you can see that I'm playing around as the kind of pilotable, flyable pawn that is default in Unreal. I'm not playing as this guy and I'm not playing as this one. So what can I do? Well, the very first one that's very easy is you can select a character, a pawn that you've placed it into the level, search in your details panel for pawn, and under the auto possessed player, you can change this from disabled to player 0, and that would be your player 1. So you can see here, I am now playing as that character, and again, that's very useful for me because I could press F11 to jump into our kind of full screen view, and I could just think, what does this look like in my actual game? What are the sizes, the dimensions, and so on? But that's not really great if I've got multiple of these characters in here, and if I've got to go through and define every single time which one of them is the one being possessed. So what I really need is I need a mode and a controller for my project to define basically what game mode am I using, what controllers are going to be created for each one of my players, and what is the default pawn that we should take control of and possess every time we play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my content browser and I'm going to go back to my blueprints folder that I've created, and I'm going to create a new folder called modes and another new one called controllers. And for now, we're not really going to do a lot in them, but we're going to create the default files that we need. So in the modes, I'm going to start off by right-clicking, creating a new blueprint class, and this one is going to be a game mode base. So I'm going to go with maybe GM because it's a game mode, and we'll go with ZD demo. That should be fine just for now. And in my controllers folder, I'm going to right-click, go to blueprint class, player controller, and we'll go with PC for this one because it's a player controller, and we'll go with ZD base, and that'll give me just enough to start with for now. I know that I've got a ZD char base. We could put ZD control base, ZD mode base if that helps, but the PC and the GM are communicating that enough for me. This one I've gone with the BP for blueprint, so at least the char lets me know that this is a character. Again, naming conventions are completely up to you. Just make sure that you're consistent with them and that you're using them so that everybody on your team and in your group knows what you're working on. So with that created, that means I've got a character, I've got a controller, and I've got a mode. So I'll open up my mode, and with this opened up, you'll see there's a section over here called classes. And one thing that you might notice, I'm just going to show you this. If I were to close it, maybe I'll just save it just for a moment, save them all, and open it up again. Like we've seen in previous videos, it might remove all the options like the viewport and things, and that's fine right now in my game mode because the classes option will still show up here in our details. And the thing we're focusing on here is what is the default player controller class, what is the default pawn class. So the player controller class, let's change that to be the one we just created, so my PC underscore ZD base, and my default pawn class, this is where I can choose between the side scroller or the top down. And for now, I'm just going to go with the side scroller. We'll stick with him. We will come back to the top down and we'll add some extra functionality in him. I'm going to split them into two different sections so I can show you what two-way movement with jumping looks like, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at what four-way movement looks like on a top-down character. And obviously, you take note of whichever one of those is more applicable to you. Now, I've got my game mode set up. Surely that would mean that if I press play now, this will be what I load in as. But it doesn't, because even though I've created the game mode, I've got to tell Unreal that this is the mode that I want to do and the mode that I want to use. So what we need to do for that is we need to go up to Edit, Project Settings, and wait for that to load up and scroll down a little bit down to where it says Maps and Modes. And the things we're looking for here is default game mode. We want to change it from game mode base, which you can see if I expand that out, the default game mode base loads me up as a default pawn. That's the one that I'm flying around as. Now, if I change this to instead be a ZD demo, what you'll see is that now these are all editable. And if you change them here, it will change them in the game mode. But we can see that we can use our default pawn class and our default controller class. Now, that's as much as we need right now, because actually, if I press play, you'll see that it will drop in and create one of those for me. Now, what you'll notice there is it created one just wherever my camera was. And that might be because maybe you don't have a player start in your level. So if I just do a little bit of a search here, you can see my level doesn't have a player start. So it's just going to create that pawn, that character, wherever I am placed. So if I just place this here and press play, you can see it creates one for me. Now what we definitely don't want to have to do is every single time we load up our game, go and place the camera exactly where we want our character to spawn. And you can see I've already got one here that I'm demoing. This is around the place that I would like my character to be starting up. So what I need to do is go to this quickly add to the project button at the top, and I need to search for that player start. I'm going to take that and drag it in, and you see it's going to give me a capsule based on the actual size of our character, and it also has this blue arrow, not the one that's coming up on the Z axis, but this blue one that determines what the facing is going to be of our character. Now we know from our character that the forward direction is going to be here, and in my case it's going to be all the way along the Y axis. Now I might actually want to go along the X axis. That might be a better way of doing it, and in fact I think in between this and the next video I'll probably rotate a lot of this stuff around, so I'm working on X and Z. But just for now I'm just going to put it onto the Y, I'm going to rotate it around, and I'll do an update of the level afterwards. And the reason for that is because now when I delete this one out of the way, just so he's not blocking our view and our movement, and I press start, you see it's going to drop me in and play me as that character. Now you can do the exact same thing if you are doing a top-down character. You put a player start in, pay attention to the blue arrow that's determining what the forward direction is, but in this case obviously we are viewing it from up here, so wherever you're placing it, that's where you're going to spawn your character. Okay, so that should be working perfectly fine for now. The only warning that I would give you, and the only way that you might encounter any issues with that, is if you are working with one of the Unreal default starter levels. Sometimes if you load up an Unreal default starter level, what you might find is they don't have kind of standard modes and controllers and pawns and things all being set up in their project settings. So you might go into here and be like, well, it still says default, but even though it says default, I'm still loading in as the default third person character or first person one. Well, that's because what they might be doing is they might just be overriding it in the demo level, the actual map that exists in that demo. So in order to change that, you need to go up to Window and then down to World Settings and turn that on. You can see I already have it turned on, and I have it tabbed so it appears next to my details. And I click on that. And the thing you're just paying attention for here is this game mode override, and just making sure that there's nothing overriding it here. So as I said, sometimes the epic examples override it for that specific map, and that is useful because that means we can set up a specific mode per map. So I could have a level which is top down and using a different mode to the rest of the game, which is the side scroller. But for now, just make sure that there's nothing in there, and that will mean that it will use the one that your project settings has set up, and hopefully that will mean then that your character will load up and you'll be able to see them from your camera perspective. And obviously at this point, go back to the previous video, play around with your camera, try and get them in the right place on the screen, the right distance, right size, and then what we'll look at now is adding some movement. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing to access more of my Unreal Engine content.